In this short video, I would like to bring something of interest to you, something that may challenge you, but in a world that seems to be going one way and then another, creating a lot of confusion and leaving so many people disorientated, it's often good that we have a role model. Can you remember the time at kindergarten, or can you remember the time in your first job and you met someone who was not your typical role model, but in fact pushed you away from communicating or sharing with others? And then out of the blue you would meet someone who inspired you to be yourself and share with them your worries, your fears, your anxieties. And then you would grow and gain great confidence. And so it is in the spiritual life. And so it is living the lay monastic life in a modern world, in a monastery without walls, where you don't have the same protection and the routine that you would have in a conventional monastery, where there's no need for a watch because the bell calls you. But living that simple life as I do here, as a lay monastic, a member of the Teo community of St. Francis, you have to become disciplined. And there are times in each day when you can sometimes get overburdened or stretched. And that's the time when you need to take time out and reflect. Reflect on role models, men and women who've aspired to greatness and whose love and tenacity inspire you to go the extra mile with God. Let me share with you some of mine. And at the moment I recognize 12 qualities that I need to help me share my vulnerability and availability with God. The first that comes to mind is the wonderful Bernadette of Lourdes. For me, she demonstrated absolute trust in the Mother of God, where she knelt at the grotto. Then it was just a cave, and though she was surrounded by all the dignitaries of the church and the village, she was guided by Mother Mary to dig a hole with her bare hands. And I've watched the video with Jennifer Jones playing the part of Bernadette. Oh gosh, it must be about 7 or 8 times now, and each time I cry when I look at her humility, when I look at her absolute trust in the Heavenly Mother. She digs that hole with her bare hands and she immediately faced rejection. She was laughed at. And then minutes later she had been taken by her parents over the hill. The young man in the village who fancied her felt water at his feet. And there was the miracle, but Bernadette wasn't there to see it, and nor were the local people. And there's a message in that, because sometimes we're not meant to see, are we? The second role model that I have had great inspiration from is Mother Teresa of Calcutta, now Saint Teresa. Her love of neighbour and her love of self are truly an inspiration. And it was her selflessness that inspired Malcolm Muggeridge, a confirmed agnostic stroke atheist, to turn his life over to God. The third quality that I find essential in my journey is joy, being able to laugh, not only at others but oneself. And here I get great comfort from the example of Francis of Assisi. Persistence is another quality. Persistence or single-mindedness, you need that, particularly living in a monastery without walls. And the role models I found of great inspiration was the little flower known as Saint Therese of Lisieux, who, though under age, was denied admittance to Carmel. But knowing it was the Pope's birthday, she went to Rome, and her determination and single-mindedness paid off. She asked him to grant her her wish on his birthday, and guess what? She got it. She entered, and there she dedicated her life to God. But there's another great saint who's just been recently canonized, and that's Mary MacKillop. Here this woman reached out to the impoverished of Australia, and the price she paid was her excommunication from the church. But towards the end of her life, they welcomed her back with open arms, but she paid the price, but she didn't give in and she didn't give up, because she knew that what she was doing was of God, for God, and through God. Commitment to God against rejection is a great quality, and one which I believe Mary Magdalene demonstrated in her love for God and for Jesus. And though she paid the price for her servanthood, where she had to leave Jerusalem because of the lack of forgiveness, the lack of support from Peter and Paul and all the early disciples, she persevered. Another quality is absolute forgiveness, as demonstrated by the Buddha and by Jesus. Surrendering of oneself, one's heart to God, is another quality, and one demonstrated by the wonderful Franciscan saint Maximilian Kolbe. He gave his life so that another Jew could be free to be with his family, and in turn he faced the chambers by the Nazi. What a gift. Providence. Providence is an essential quality that in this world of materialism, of the haves and have-nots, and I want and I will get and I will destroy until I get it, is a quality of God from God to the heart. And here as lay monastics, as members of the Teo community, we're encouraged to take the vow of providence, a complete trust in God, and the role model here, of course, is Abraham. Abraham, and again Mother Teresa of Calcutta, because she ensured, as we do, that in their constitution or governing document that they take the vow of providence and are not allowed to apply for any funding from any statutory body. So their trust is absolute in God. Obedience to God. That is a great quality, and one I fall down on many times, but my role model is the Archbishop Romerio from San Salvador, who was murdered rather, for daring to speak out against the militia, the junta, for what they were doing to God's people. He paid the price. He was murdered at the altar while saying Mass before God's people as a shepherd of his flock. Detachment to materialism and worldly values is another quality, and the two role models here for me is Gandhi and St. Francis. The 11th quality would be spiritual integrity, and here I have to say the Dalai Lama really touches my heart, because here is a man who just radiates that love of the divine for the divine. And then Buddha. And finally, compassion. And built into that compassion is mercy. And there's no better role model than Kuan Yin, the Eastern equivalent of Mother Mary. Isis and Mother Mary herself. What beautiful role models to have as we struggle in our daily search for the divine, as we cope with many dramas thrown at us, and sometimes when we're caught off guard, the enemy of God can strike the heart, leaving us quite vulnerable to further attack. But we reflect on these great men and women who found great solace in silence, and who left us legacies of love, inspiration, and pure